Welcome to a conversation with a community leader. And this show is hosted by Bremerton-Kitsap, which is a nonprofit organization which works in helping to develop young leaders in our community. And I'm Cary Bozeman, and I'm your host, and I'm the former mayor of Bremerton and the former mayor of Bellevue. And my guest today is Bill Mahan, who is truly the epitome of a community leader and a good friend of mine.
Thank
Bill,
you, Cary.
welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you on the program. And just a little bit, I know that you've been a county commissioner, you've been a port commissioner, you've been a water commissioner, and you're currently a member of the board of directors of the Public Facilities District, and which is about ready to make some pretty significant decisions in our community and maybe grant $15 to $20 million. So I'm interested in all of that, and I welcome you to the program.
Thank you.
It's truly a conversation with a leader, and you're a leader.
Okay.
So just to get started, what got you to Kitsap County? Did you grow up here? What's your background?
Well, my family moved out here in 1941. My dad went to work for the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard during the war. And so I was in the second grade, and so I grew up in Bremerton.
Where were you born?
Denver, Colorado.
Oh, you're darn. Yeah.
So we after the war was over, we never thought of going back.
So this has been home. What did your mom do?
She was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. You have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother and three sisters.
So you got one brother and three sisters. Are they still in this area?
Well, unfortunately, one of my sisters has passed away, but the other two live here. They live in Port Orchard, and my brother lives here in Bremerton.
Yeah. You still see him a lot?
Yes. Yeah. We served together on the Paratransit Services Board of Directors, so he's gotten involved.
There's another board you were on.
Yeah.
Right. Where'd you go to high school here?
Went to Bremerton High School, graduated in 1953. Then I went to work, and then I joined the Air Force and spent 4 years in the Air Force and came home.
Where were you stationed?
Well, I was stationed first in San Antonio, and then in Anchorage, Alaska, and then I ended my 4 years in Riverside, California, teaching in a school.
Did you think about staying in the military?
Never.
Never? Oh.
No, you know, the military is a great place for some people.
Yeah.
And but it wasn't for me, and the reason is it's just too regimented, and anybody with one more stripe than you can order you around. And
right. That wouldn't work for you.
No. I mean, if my boss tells me to do something, that's fine. But just a little story. The last day I'm checking out, I got my orders in my hand, saying goodbye to my friends, and some officer, I didn't know him at all, come over and told me to go get a haircut. Yeah, that just proved my point.
So 4 years in the Air Force, and then you got discharged, and what'd you do after that?
Well, I came home and floated around different jobs. I sold door-to-door storm windows. I sold sewing machines. I was assistant manager at Cress's Dime Store in downtown Bremerton. And then I got elected when I was 33 as county commissioner. And
before you go there, what got you interested in politics?
Well, I always was interested in politics.
Oh, were you?
And
I was too. I remember in junior high, I ran for 8th grade treasurer or something like that, and I think I won. But I mean, even back in those days, you know, I thought being in a position where you can have some say about what goes on always appealed to me.
Yeah, and you know, I was just fascinated by politics, period. National politics, local, statewide, and so I had
and you still are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I had a dream of being a county commissioner, and that happened.
Do you remember your first race?
Well, my first I ran for the Annapolis Water District for commissioner there, and I won that one pretty handily. And I had a plan. I was going to run for school board after that, and then county commissioner. And in politics, you never know what's going to happen. A couple of guys came and asked me to run for county commissioner. And
how old were you then? Do you remember?
I was 32 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time I was elected, I was the youngest county commissioner in the state.
Really?
Yep.
Well, I ran for my first position on the Bellevue City Council when I was 34.
34.
Yeah.
And you won.
And I won.
Yeah.
I was interested in the city. My passion was parks in those days. I was working with kids with the Boys and Girls Club, and I didn't think the city was building enough parks. So I ran against the fellow that was the current mayor at that time. It was a council manager, former government.
I know that.
And no one thought I would beat him, but because of my work at the Boys and Girls Club, I knew half the families in town, right? So I doorbelled and worked hard at it and got elected and served 4 terms on the city council. So anyway, go back to your first race, county commissioner.
Yes. So I ran as a Republican, and I had.
Are you still a Republican?
Well, I'm nobody now.
You're an independent.
You know, I'm an independent.
Okay.
Actually, I took a test and I found out I'm a libertarian.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. So, but at that time, I leaned toward more conservative politics.
You remember who the governor was in those?
Dan Evans.
Well,
yeah.
Dan Evans was always a hero of mine. And at one time, because he was governor, I thought about being a Republican. But I never had to. I'm a moderate Democrat at this time. But yeah, he was. I still think he was the best governor in the state.
I was just talking with my wife about him a couple of days ago, and he was the best governor we've ever had in my lifetime.
Yeah, in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Rossellini was pretty good too, but Evans. So back to
Okay, so I ran against a one-term county commissioner by the name of Bob Lloyd. He was a Democrat, and I had a
do you think, Bill, county commissioners ought to be a partisan race?
I can argue that either way. They don't really make partisan decisions,
right?
And so there's a reason for them not to be partisan. The only partisan thing they do is if there's a vacancy, like in the state legislature, and they have to fill that seat. That's very partisan, but that's all they do.
Right.
On the other hand, it's a breeding ground for running for higher office, and it's I think good to be able to get acquainted with parties and with that kind of politics. So there's been a number of county commissioners that have gone on to the legislature and to state office. So it could go either way. The other offices in the county ought to be nonpartisan.
I've always felt like anything below state legislature, which is obviously partisan, local government level should be nonpartisan. But that's my only that's my own belief. So back to your first race, you declared as Republican, ran against a Democrat. What year was that?
It was 1968.
1968. Wow.
And I had a fairy tale campaign. I should have never won. I mean,
really?
Yeah. I was a milkman and new at politics. And
you were a milkman running for county commissioner. Good for you, Bill.
Yep. And this fellow had only been there.
They don't have milkmen anymore.
They don't.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the Smith Dairy does.
Oh, do they? Yeah, that's right.
So Bob Lloyd had been there a year, but he was not very. He didn't have very much initiative in campaigning. And
yeah.
I had a fairy tale campaign and got all the breaks in the world, and I think I beat him by 190 votes out of 35,000 votes.
Wow.
I mean, it was an upset.
Did you have a campaign manager?
No.
You did your own?
Did it, and he said afterwards when they interviewed him, he said, well, he had a professional campaign deal, and I didn't. It was my committee who didn't know any bounds, and nobody could tell them you can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they just assumed they could do anything they wanted to.
Yeah.
So it was a great campaign.
Do you doorbell a lot in a county commissioner race?
Yes. Yes,
do?
you do. Yep.
Do you remember how much money you had to raise for that?
Uh, I spent $3,500 in that campaign.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got elected in '68. How many terms were you?
Yeah, I served 5 terms.
Wow, you were a
And,
5-term county
yeah.
commissioner?
Set a record. There's
That's 20 years.
20 years. No one's ever done that before or
So
since.
So no one's ever served more than 5 terms as a county commissioner?
Right.
Wow,
Yep.
that's amazing.
So and when I lost, basically I'd been there too long.
Yeah,
You don't, in a county commissioner, you lose votes almost every day you make decisions.
Oh,
And,
well, knowing your background, I mean, you're a person that likes to create change and to get things done. And whenever you do that, you're pushing the political envelope because there's people on both sides of that change.
Yep.
So what do you attribute your best accomplishments or things you're most proud of as a county commissioner?
Well, yeah, and that's a great question because when I drive by these things, no one really knows what happened.
And that's unfortunate. We don't do enough of the history of these projects so people know how they happened.
Yeah. So the number one thing that I'm most proud of is that I was known as the Social Services Commissioner, and I led the charge to create Kitsap Mental Health.
Well, there's a legacy.
And that's
how many people have they helped since then?
Oh, it's a tremendous agency, and they really do good work. And so they call me the father of mental health services in Kitsap County.
Well, that's something you should be proud of, though.
Yeah. The second one, probably it would be the Tremont Bridge in Port Orchard. There was only one way through Port Orchard when I was elected, and the cars were backed up during the rush hour traffic, clear back to it was called the Clambake Restaurant at that time. So getting a bridge built across the canyon was a really big job. We didn't have any money. We had to cobble together federal grants, and so it was a great project, and of course you drive Tremont Street now and it's just loaded. Without that bridge, Port Orchard would be in serious trouble.
Yeah. Where was the county courthouse in those days?
Where it is today.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right where the old, sure, where the old courthouse is and all that kind of.
In fact, when I was first elected, the county commissioners had an office that had 3 desks in it. One desk was occupied by their secretary, and the 3 county commissioners argued over the other 2 desks. And so depending on who was there on any given day, you didn't have anything personal in your desk because it was just open to everybody. So.
Bill, county government this county government is kind of a traditional old county government. I mean, you have 3 commissioner system, you have no county executive.
Yes.
So it's sometimes hard for me to figure out who's running the show day to day, right? Now, a lot of counties have gone to a county executive and 5 commissioner system because a commissioner has a lot of territory to cover. 3 commissioners for all of Kitsap County. What's your sense about, I think we've talked about charter change in the past. What's your sense about the time? Is it time for charter change or is it working?
Well, it was time 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's been 2 efforts to pass a charter. The first one, when I was a county commissioner, we started the process, and the freeholders developed a really nice, it was a county commissioner manager form, much like Bellevue, form of government.
Right.
And I think we had 5 commissioners, so we expanded the number of commissioners. It failed badly. And I think it was because the other elected officials in the courthouse were going to be eliminated, and so they went out and campaigned against it.
Yeah.
The second one was, I think 20 years ago, and it had a county executive council form of government. And it got more votes than the first one, but still was far below the 50%. So we'll have one eventually. It just depends on the time. A lot of people say you have to have a scandal in a courthouse get it. King County, for instance, when they passed their charter, there was a scandal in the courthouse involving one of the commissioners, and it passed. Pierce County, same thing. There was a scandal going on between the sheriff and the adult entertainment industry, and the League of Women Voters led the charge, and they ended up with an executive form of government. So, so a lot of people say that's what we have to have in order to pass it. I don't believe that. But.
I think one of the things that's hard to pass these new government programs is people see that as more government, and there are a lot of people that would just as well have less. So, but I agree with you, Bill. I think it's time. We're growing. We're becoming a pretty good sized county, and we seem to have a system that was made more for the 50s and 60s than for the 2020.
Yep.
But it's hard. But you know, you always wonder who runs the day-to-day business of the county. And I know there are people who have that responsibility, but it seems like if you had a county executive, it would be clear who's in charge of the day-to-day.
You'd have one person that you could go to.
You would, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your port commissioner career. Then what you got beat as a county commissioner, probably because people thought you were there long enough, right? That always happens.
You know,
yeah, so you pushed the envelope on that one. But then decided you wanted to stay in politics. What happened? How'd you decide to run for port commissioner?
well, after I left the commissioner position, I went off and did a couple of things, and then in 2000, the South Kitsap, pardon me, it was the Central Kitsap port commissioner. We represented east of or west of Highway 16 and out to Seebeck, and a fellow by the name of Dick Feek decided to retire, and a number of my friends came to me and said, we wish you would run for the port. And the reason was they felt the port was not using its powers, and they wanted to see it be more active. And so I ran, and again, it was a close campaign. They had told me, you'll win hands down. You don't even need to campaign. And I said, you're crazy. And so I won by, I think, a couple hundred votes, and served 2 terms.
Those are 6-year terms, so that's another 12 years.
Yep.
So, well, I'm aware because you and I worked together at the port for a while when I was there, and I know you had a lot to do with getting the Bremerton Marina built, which you should be proud of. It's full with a waiting list of people, and that was a wonderful project that had a lot to do with the revitalization of downtown Bremerton. So I'll go back to the port commissioner thing in a minute, but I want to make sure we get in the conversation about the Public Facilities District Board. Very few people really understand this, but I'd like you to take a minute and just describe what the Public Facilities District Board is, how it's funded, how it was created.
Well, first of all, the state created public facility districts to help Seattle build the Mariner baseball team.
That's right.
And
they did.
And so when they passed,
it still owns the Mariner Stadium.
That's right. And so they passed that legislation. They didn't let anybody else in the state, any county or city, do the same thing.
So they only had a King County
just
PFD.
King County, yeah. And so the other counties went to the legislature and said, hey, how about us? You know, we have similar projects we'd like to build. So the state then opened the door for every county to have a public facility district. This one was created in the late 90s. The effort was led by Rick Smith. And it
local attorney.
Yep, it was basically
Silverdale attorney.
Yep, and he was
a former legislator,
and
owned the baseball team.
Well, and that was the purpose of creating the public facility district, was to bring semi-professional baseball to Kitsap County, and he ended up bringing it the Blue Jackets,
right,
which no longer are here.
No longer here.
Yeah, so that's when it was created and how it got created. And
so is there a PFD in every county now?
Not every county. A number of them have created them, but Some counties have chosen not to.
Right.
So to create one requires a vote of the county commissioners.
Oh, okay.
So, and in fact, I think Rick informed us that the first time that the county commissioners were approached in Kitsap County, they said no, they would not create it. And so it was the second time around that it got created.
So how does it get funded?
Okay.
Or what's its purpose, and how does it get funded?
Its purpose is to build and or operate public facilities. And in most of the counties, the public facility is a convention center that is owned by the PFD and operated by the PFD.
So there's one project in the county.
That's right. Kitsap County decided...
And like Seattle, the PFD owns a baseball stadium,
Yes.
and they operate the baseball stadium.
That's right.
But in Kitsap, you people decided to go another way.
The board of directors back in 2000 decided that they wanted to fund multiple projects and not own anything. So as we know, they funded in that first go-around 3 projects. The Bremerton Convention Center on the waterfront.
Right, I'm well aware of that one.
And then they did the ball fields at the fairgrounds for the baseball team, and then a big soccer project up in North Kitsap. So those were the only 3 projects that were funded, and they spent about $12 million investing in those projects. They received their money from a portion of the sales tax, a very small portion.
In the county sales tax.
Yes. Anybody that pays sales tax in the county, the public facility district gets a small portion of that.
Yeah.
It's like 0.003, something like that.
So the PFD, is it a government body, the Public Facilities District? Is it
Yes, it is.
special purpose government?
It's a special purpose municipal government.
Yeah.
And so they have all of the
And the board is appointed by the county commissioners?
well, that's interesting. The board is comprised of 7 members. Each county commissioner appoints 1 from their district, and then the 4 mayors nominate someone to the county commissioners to represent the city. So as an example, Mayor Patanzu in Port Orchard nominated me to represent Port Orchard on the board.
Yeah.
And the commissioners appointed me.
Right. Well, I'm very familiar, when I was mayor of Bremerton, we really worked hard at trying to convince the board to fund the Kitsap Conference Center. And they did, along with some other projects, as you mentioned. But without that funding, that conference center would never been built. And because of that conference center, it stimulated other downtown projects, like the Anthony's and a hotel and all that. So I think that was a great example of how the PFD works, how it can work. So how do you get your money? I mean, you borrow money against your sales tax?
Yes. What the board members did back in the early 2000s is they projected out what their revenue stream would be, and then bonds were issued that revenue stream would cover.
PFD issue those bonds?
Pardon me?
Does the PFD issue the bonds?
In that case, no, they didn't, because they had no credit rating. They were brand new, and they would have paid an extraordinarily high interest rate. So they went to the county commissioners and asked the county commissioners if they would issue the bonds, and the county commissioners agreed, and so that's how they received their money. So each month now we pay the county the payment for the bonds.
So you get a portion of the sales tax each month, and those are used to pay off the bonds.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But you have, since that first go-around, which has been quite a while ago when you built the conference center, that's been a long time ago, you haven't done any projects since then. Is that because the monies were being used to pay off those bonds, and there wasn't money for additional projects?
Well, what's interesting is the legislature in the very first go-round prohibited the public facility district from identifying a new project after a certain date. So they could only build or invest in the 3 projects they did. They couldn't put any money into anything else.
Okay, Bill, we're getting close to time, so I want to, I think right now you're in the process of considering 4 or 5 projects, right?
Yes.
The community center in downtown Port Orchard, racetrack at the port Port of Bremerton, the Heritage Park up in the north, and there's a project in Paulsbo that I think I read in the paper have made your top priority list.
Yep.
Right. So what's going to happen now?
Okay, so the public facility district has spent mostly a year and a half of getting to this point. So we first put out an RFP, and actually we got 7 projects, and then we had proposals from them and listened to their project. And a week ago Monday, we made the decision to create our priority listing. Now we're in the process of figuring out how we're going to develop the funds to fund those projects. So we're asking the county commissioners again to issue the bonds. It means a difference of about $8 million if they do.
That's a big number.
It's a big number, and we met with them and showed them the listing and said, you know, we could do more if you would issue the bonds. So they're considering that right now. As you know, they had a bad experience with the housing authority, so they're a little nervous about issuing any bonds.
But those were circumstances much different than they are today.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah, and the economy's good, and I see very
well.
little.
Then housing authority didn't have a revenue stream. We do.
Right,
so,
right, you do.
And we have a good track record. We've made our payments and we've put money in the bank. So
I want to make the point that the PFD, which very few people know anything about, has had a huge impact on our community. And it looks like you're going to continue down that road. These projects are all great projects, and they're all going to have impact on our community. So I want to thank you, Bill, for doing this. It's not easy making these decisions when I'm sure people are calling you every day asking for your support. So it's a political process as well as a process of criteria, but it's important. So thank you for your service, my friend.
Thank you.
You continue to serve our community, and I know you're still playing golf at the Kitsap Country Club too.
Yep.
So this has been my conversation with Bill Mahan, a true community leader in our community. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on A Conversation with a Community Leader.
Leadership Kitsap is our community's civic leadership program. Leadership Kitsap fosters and empowers educated, prepared, and engaged community leaders. For over 25 years, we have cultivated leaders that work collaboratively to create positive change, dedicated to making our community a better place to work and live. We expose our class to Kitsap's leaders across public, private, and nonprofit sectors. We're happy to bring many of the conversations with these leaders to you. Strong leaders build strong communities.